The Left Brain Coup. I've been reading through Iain McGilchrist's The Master and His Emissary, and it has fundamentally remade the way I view the world. And the problem is, it's not a book you review all at once. There are so many little things, it's better to put it into nice little independent breakaways. And one such takeaway I cannot shake is the over reliance on the left side hemisphere. Now, to understand what this means, it's better to explain how thoughts travel through the brain and what each hemisphere is responsible for. And to start, the right hemisphere is the holding whole images, the contextualizer, it's the empathizer, especially in a human understanding. And in general, it's benign. It simply just takes the world as it is. It's a judge, it's a king, it's the master. The left hemisphere is a translator of sorts. It's this compartmentalizer. It categorizes, builds models. It has this nice little flow. It assigns meaning to things. It's very procedural and mechanistic of sorts. And in that way, it's the courtroom. It's the king's court. It's the emissary. And what McGilchrist is highlighting is that the left brain, the emissary, has taken over. It has enacted a coup of sorts. And to better understand this, we're going to use an example, a dark but powerful examples, because those are always the best examples. So imagine you're a child in a forest and you come upon a dead cat, and you're holding like a branch of sorts, common enough experience in the forest, right? The right brain begins by taking just what you see, it observes, it just has the information and it flows in. The left brain, right, because the thoughts now move over to the left brain, it has to kind of deliberate about this. It starts to think, it's like, oh, should I bury it? Do I just leave it to rot? Maybe I'm not even interested. You know, what killed it? Why is it dead? Maybe if you're a little sadistic, you're thinking, well, is it dead? Maybe I just hit it with a stick. But all of these thoughts have to travel back to the right brain. They have to be humanized. So the grief washes over you. You feel bad for the cat. You want to run home to your mom because you feel sad. You're just a little kid after all. And at the end of the day, you just want to bury it. You get a shoebox, you dig a hole, you put it, you feel better, you go about your day. In that right, left, right is a really important concept here, because that path is a part of what he's talking about. Because in the over reliance, sort of that getting stuck on the left brain halfway through a thought becomes a pathology of sorts. And McGilchrist mentions autism and schizophrenia as being two such left brain pathologies. Part 2, autism and schizophrenia. Autism can be characterized as being trapped in this left brain loop, perpetually making circles, right? The thoughts never return to the right brain. They never get their humanizing reality check. In the forest example, the child becomes obsessive, collecting every single data point possible. There's no blood on this leaf. There's no blood on this leaf. There's a track here. There's bears are in hibernation this time of year, so it's not a bear. Whatever kind of procedural evidence building endeavor forms. For schizophrenia, the left brain goes into this unregulated hyperactivation, and it spirals out of control and begins interpreting any kind of signs, the most random specks of blood or tracks, or maybe even animal tracks, become evidence of a local serial killer. And when we take this and look at the modern political space, McGilchrist's observation really seemed to be unfolding, and not just in the way that the internet likes to assign or blame conspiracies or whatever to one side, but both camps are engaging in this left brain over reliance, this autist schizo framework. For me, the most preeminent right wing example is the 2020 election. It's this schizo connecting of Sharpie Gate and suitcases under the table and fire alarms and blocking of the panels and all these different little things. And the autistic procedural form of it is turning to Benford's Law, or declaring, oh, it's legal challenges and recounts and any type of prosecution. There's nothing really trying to address the reality of a 2020 election. And for the flip side of the coin, the left wing example is CRT. It's this giant interconnected systemic racism, white privilege, math is racist, this connecting unassociated cultural things related to historical discrimination or slavery, colonization, and then this autistic drilling down of every single racial disparity, and every single study is evidence and proof of this grand narrative. There's no there's no relating it to any type of experience or addressing a practical issue for people. And you can kind of see how these two mindsets are kind of slowly feeding, and they almost kind of self justify each other, where the the bringing and the connecting of ideas forces this rationalization game, and the the fact that they're cooperating for the same ends, and it becomes this incestuous monster that just feeds on itself with seemingly no end in sight. Part 3, the Amphisbaena. The Greeks had a mythological monster, the Amphisbaena, sort of a two-headed snake, or a snake with heads at both ends, right? The ability to feed in either direction, to consume. And this monster is emblematic of kind of decay and consumption and greed of a sort. It's an unnatural formation. And since there are two heads, it doesn't really possess a traditional sort of meaning curve to it. It simply just consumes. It consumes for the sake of consuming. It's self-justification. And the dynamic here is that the online political space feeds this monster so well. It just moves and bounces to topic to topic. One week it's war in Iran, and the next week it's primary elections, and currently right now it's these Supreme Court rulings. And there isn't a goal of conclusion, there isn't a conversation of conclusion. It's simply just feeding the two heads of the snake simply because it demands food. But what happens is that when you run out of food to give the snake, it begins to consume its handlers, right? Because this is a creature that could never be satiated. It must consume. And if we do not tame this beast, right, the end game is sort of just this slow decay and bleed into every single topic that shapes our society of a sense. And what it means is that until everything is consumed, this beast must continue consuming, and it will begin to starve. There's nothing left for it to eat, and it'll just rot away like a giant lobster that's grown too large, and it can no longer feed itself properly, and it can't molt or shed. Just dies in its own prison. Part 4, the path to resolution. This crash, this decay is avoidable, right? This is not our first time engaging in these things. Many of these ideas are not new, but saving ourselves requires conclusive and deeply satisfying ends. And in our left brain and right brain context, that means we must forcefully pull political narratives, drag them by force into the right brain for total recontextualization. And what this means is that we need some reaffirming baseline. We need to touch ground, touch grass of sorts in the political space, and that all political narratives and political dynamics have to extend from this. Again, not new ideas here, but in the West, historically, this is sort of a Christian mythos, morals, and even just at the very least metaphorical knowledge. And that these narratives possessed a level of understanding for, you know, personal dignity and the limitations of human beings, and sort of a natural understanding and grace about the way that we would go about the world. These are things that the left brain are just not concerned with. And if we do not tame this snake, if we do not, temper its hunger by cutting its head in two, we will lose the collective willpower to control it. And we will be forced to go down the decaying cycle. So, in another sense, if we do not push for that baseline from which all politics needs to extend from, then we will decay. And what this means is we have to point out and recognize that the dominant forces in our current political era, accelerationism, hyperpartisanship, intense psychological isolationism, and yes, since we're a democracy, democratic apathy, are not solutions. They're not viable solutions. These are meat for the snake. They only feed it. And a true resolution has to be tangible, has to be structural. It has to formally come into existence inside people's lives. It cannot be abstract and loose. It requires some level of systemic and constitutional compromise, or perhaps a overwhelming cultural push where the public formally comes onto one side of the issue and reunifies. Or we could have the rapid adoption of newly negotiated incentives, because I think with AI, anybody can see this, that there needs to be a line redrawn about what the standards are, because politics will not resolve itself. Society won't redeem itself, then civilization will not survive on its own. It is up to the people inside of it, the people who are a part of it, to push for these things, to push for these things. And at the very least, we should try to push for the strongest possible narrative, and we should struggle with the highest rung on the end goal totem, so to speak. And as a side note, to be clear, I didn't make this video to try and convince you that I have the answers or know the future, or even that many of the things are somehow magically new. I made this to give a map, an idea of a path forward, to be able to see and point out changing tides, right? In a lens framework to identify this horrid beast that we're all feeding. And hopefully I showed you that what we should be looking for is a shared narrative above all things, from which we can draw upon, from which we can base everything upon, that we can build things upon it. in another sense, we need to put the judge back in charge of the court. We have to put the king back in charge of the kingdom. We have to put the master back in charge of the brain of sorts. Remember to like and subscribe if you liked what you see. Thank you for watching. I learned a lot. Hopefully you did too. Catch you guys in the next one.